Guest here into the discussion. We have in the studio retired U.S. General Mark Kimmett. He's also a former Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs. Thanks for coming in. And in Tehran, Mohammad Eslami is a research fellow in the Middle East and North Africa Studies at Tehran University. Thanks so much for joining us too. If I could start with General Kimmett here in the studio. So basically, we spoke a couple of hours ago and you were leaning on the side of saying you expected a negative reaction from Washington. Looks like you are right on this one. Is this an outright rejection?
Well, first of all, I wish I hadn't been right. I would like to see this go to diplomacy, but it certainly doesn't look like it's going to be that way. I don't think we've read the entire proposal. It'll no doubt come out fairly soon. I'm actually more concerned about the fact that the Iranians may not want to discuss the nuclear issue at all. If that's the case, I think we're in for rocky roads ahead.
And Mohammad Eslami in Tehran, how do you think Tehran is going to react to this reaction from Donald Trump?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I think that nobody cares about the so-called President of the United States, like or dislike. This is the negotiations about the Iranian interest. This is the negotiations about the Iranian security. So right now, the Iranians offered the best scenario for Donald Trump to go out of this crisis.
Sorry, Mohammed, just, I mean, to be clear, if another side in the negotiations says they don't like it, that is an issue that Iran has to deal with one way or another, right? Because you're negotiating with the US.
Yes, but it doesn't. But the topic of the negotiation is not about a person in Washington claiming that I like something or I don't like something. It's about the Iranian security. It's about the security and the rights of the Iranian people. It's not about a person in Washington ordering other countries and other nations based on his conversations with a war criminal in Tel Aviv. It's about the Iranians. It's about the future of the region. It's about the peace in the Persian Gulf. And it's about the global economy, which is bleeding right now.
General, do we know what is the issue? Is the issue that, I mean, were they exchanging proposals on some of the big issues here, like the nuclear program enrichment? Or is there a disagreement about this phases, the idea that end the war first and then we'll tackle the big issues later? What was the disagreement over, or do we know?
Well, you're asking me to speculate.
No, from what we know.
From what we know, I think that there is a rejection by the President of the United States on the core issue of nuclear, the nuclear program inside of Iran. Let's go back to square one. This started because of the three major issues that every president since the discovery of the Iranian nuclear program has had, which is ballistic missiles, proxy operations, and the illegal nuclear program. Now, as we have gone over the weeks and months since February 28th, there have been diversions, Strait of Hormuz, Kharg Island, oil issues like that. But the United States, like every president has been concerned about, it's staying focused on the core issues. In this case, the nuclear program.
And the proposal went into it, you think?
I think, well,
the response, the Iranian response.
Oh, I have very little doubt. Everything that I've heard would suggest that the Iranians just completely ignored that point that was delivered by the United States, and that's just not going to work. I think of all the issues that the United States asked to see a response on, the response on the nuclear issue is what led to the, as we call it, the thank you for your attention to this matter notes that President Trump always sends.
So is there a disagreement on phases, very briefly?
I don't think we know. I don't think we know, but I would suspect more than anything else, it was a complete rejection by the Iranians on the willingness to negotiate on the nuclear program.
Right. Let me bring in Mohammad Eslami once again from Tehran. So where does mediation, diplomacy go to from here, Mohammed? Is there a path forward?
You know, there are three challenges we are facing. First of all, it's about mistrust. American started two campaigns against Iranians right at the time of active negotiations. First of all, Donald Trump and his team should have the ability to again build the trust for the Iranians. The second point and the second challenge is the American inability to offer irreversible actions when they are asking Iranians to do irreversible actions regarding nuclear stockpile or something like this. They are not ready to lift the primary sanctions, which is very important, not for Iran, but also for the global economy. The third point is about the blockade, declaring blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. It was a fault from the beginning. The Americans couldn't do anything regarding opening the Strait of Hormuz. They make lots of problems for the region, for Persian Gulf, and for other countries around Persian Gulf. And right now, if they are unable to end this blockade, it means that they are not ready to think more about the details of the negotiations. If it's about the nuclear weapons, Iran always declared that it is not going to pursue any kind of activities regarding nuclear weapons. And IAEA had lots of thousands of reports regarding these things. So if Donald Trump is thinking about realities on the ground, he should think about more creative diplomatic solutions. Otherwise, it's a kind of checkmate for him.
All right, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, General Mark Kimmitt, former Assistant Secretary for Political and Military Affairs, for coming in. Thank you, Mohammed Eslami, Research Fellow in the Middle East and North Africa Studies from Tehran University, joining us from the Iranian capital. Thank you both. Now, all this comes as Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates say they detected several drones in their airspace. And Qatar says a commercial cargo ship was targeted by a drone in its territorial waters. Iran's military has also issued a new warning to the US and Israel, saying if aggression resumes, it will be ready.
If
the enemy once again becomes afflicted with a miscalculation and resorts to aggression against our country, they will certainly face other surprising options. These options, in addition to being the determination and will of our colleagues and comrades in the armed forces, will use more advanced equipment and new methods of war, and perhaps most importantly of all, new arenas of war, meaning that the war will enter an arena that the enemy did not predict.
Will Todman is a senior fellow in the Middle East program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us. So, Todd, about an hour ago, you were speaking to my colleague, and it sounded like you may have been slightly cautiously optimistic, and then everything has changed. What went wrong?
Well, I thought that we were seeing very small signs that the Iranians were beginning to make concessions on some of the points that have previously been sticking points in these negotiations. There were reports in the Wall Street Journal that the Iranians had agreed to let some of its highly enriched uranium be taken out of its territory, and also that they were prepared to dilute the rest of it. That's a new concession that we have not heard yet in the negotiations. So I think there were a few signs for optimism. And I also am skeptical that President Trump wants to really escalate the military campaign against Iran once again, just before he travels to China. But of course, we've now seen his post on Truth Social saying that this is totally unacceptable. And so I think in some ways this indicates that President Trump was still expecting the Iranians to essentially surrender at this point. He thought the military campaign would force them to surrender, and it didn't. He thought the economic blockade that the United States has imposed on Iranian shipping would force the Iranian regime to surrender, and that hasn't. And so I think now in some ways we're back to square one, where the path forward is very unclear, and the options that President Trump has to try to increase leverage against the Iranians will come with really severe costs for the international economy, for the global economy, and may not change the Iranian regime's calculations at all.
You said we're back to square one. You might remember on Wednesday, Donald Trump said he expected a deal to be wrapped up, to be finalized within a week. So we're not far off of that, right? Is there time for this to go back to square one and get wrapped up?
I mean, I think it is very difficult with these negotiations. It's always hard to tell what is public posturing, what are signals that the two sides are trying to send to their own publics, to the other side, and what's actually real. So it is difficult to tell without, being in the room and really seeing exactly what each side is saying. This could
Let me put it this way, Todd.
effort.
What is more likely right now? That this exchange of proposals process goes on, or the US resumes attacks on Iran?
I think it is more likely that the exchange goes on over the next week because of Trump's visit to China. I don't think he wants a major conflict to break out that could disrupt his travel and would overshadow the outcomes of that summit with Xi Jinping. But he continues to send military assets to the region. And it is clear that that is an option that he's, I think, seriously considering. I think that would be a mistake because I don't think it would encourage the Iranians to change course. But it seems that advisors close to him are pushing him towards that military option once again. And it certainly seems clear that the Iranians are concerned that he may resume military strikes against Iran. They have said that that will be met with a severe retaliation and that Iran has new cards to play to fight back against the United States and probably against states in the region as well.
Todd, Donald Trump's comments came after that phone call with the Israeli Prime Minister. Do we know what sort of role he is playing? We can't forget, of course, that Israel is another party to this conflict. It attacked Iran alongside the US on the 28th of February, right?
Yes, and I do think there are different emphases when it comes to the priorities that Israel and the United States has. For a long time, Israel has been very focused on Iran's nuclear program. And so I think for Netanyahu, the idea that Iran had not agreed to dismantle its nuclear facilities, had not agreed to totally get rid of its highly enriched uranium, and had not agreed to a very long moratorium on its ability to enrich uranium was unacceptable. And it seems very likely that he would have articulated those beliefs to President Trump in that phone call. I think on the United States side, President Trump has articulated different goals as this operation has gone on. And the nuclear piece is certainly a part of that. But I think he cares about some other pieces as well. I think he wants the Strait of Hormuz to reopen because of the effects on the global economy and on gas prices here at the pump in the United States. As we move towards the midterms, I think that's going to be a growing concern for him. So I think there are different, some different emphases in the priorities. But ultimately, I would be surprised if President Trump had decided this was an acceptable deal. Netanyahu had said it was completely unacceptable, and that had swayed Trump. I think ultimately Trump is going to make the decision to end this when he feels the time is right. And that's largely going to be tied to his ability to describe this outcome as better than that former President Barack Obama achieved with the JCPOA back in 2015.
All right, we'll leave it there. Will Todman, Senior Fellow in the Middle East Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.